welcome to another Q&A video. It's very rare that I do these, but I've got a fair few questions to get through. Let's get started. First of all, Lord D, aka Delvin Bailey, asks if I'm planning to review another ScoobyDoo game on PS2 or PS3. I don't think there is a PS3 ScoobyDoo game, is there? Either way, I am indeed planning to review some in the future. I've not actually played any yet. All the ScoobyDoo games I've played, well, both games I've played, I've actually already covered on this channel. No! Otherwise, I'm well aware of Mystery Mayhem and is it called Spooky Swamp? I know of that one as well. It doesn't look great. It doesn't look great, but you never know. It might surprise me. The thing is, the ScoobyDoo reviews are great for future Halloween videos. Although, to be honest, I don't need to save up so many of those because there are quite a few creepy games out there. I think what's even more difficult to find is Christmas-themed games. Ow! I mean, I've only done like a handful of Christmas specials, I think, so the fact that I'm running out already, it's kind of mind-boggling, really. I'm really quite surprised there aren't more Christmas games out there. And am I planning to review Epic Mickey? At some point, possibly. I've only actually played the recent demo of the rebrushed version because I never owned a Wii. I was actually really annoyed that the original Epic Mickey was never released on PlayStation, considering the sequel, The Power of Two, was. I also would like to cover the Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, which I'm aware is a PS3 remake of an old Sega game. I've not actually played the original Sega game, which is part of the reason why I'm a little apprehensive about it. I mean, I'd usually like to do like a comparison thing, you know, which I can't do, obviously. I actually think it looks more like Mickey Mania than the original Castle of Illusion, personally. Hiya, Mr. Goat! I would like to cover that and Epic Mickey at some point. Roxas4878 says, if you would move to another country, which would you like? To be honest with you, I don't actually have much wanderlust. Okay, so I've travelled abroad twice, but the first time I travelled abroad, it was to Fuerteventura, and I was 2. With my parents, obviously, not by myself. Obviously, I don't really remember it. The second time I went abroad was when I went with, it was a school trip to Cologne in Germany for 3 days. It was December, it was fucking freezing, and I didn't enjoy the experience one bit. In terms of where I'd like to go, I don't know about moving to another country. I should like to visit some other countries first before I make that decision. I think that would be wise. I would like to visit parts of America. I don't think I will actually like New York, but I would like to go to New York, just to kind of cross it off the bucket list, if you like. But I don't think I would like it because I don't like crowds. I don't like people, generally. So, odds are I'm not gonna like New York. Otherwise, I'm pretty open to visiting places. I'd like to see Italy. I'd like to go to Paris at some point. But, yeah, I'm not very well traveled, put it that way. From where do you usually buy your PS1 and PS2 games? It's a variety of stuff, to be honest with you. I will get them from eBay, Amazon, second-hand shops in town. Very occasionally I'll get downloaded copies of games from the PlayStation Store. It is very rare that I do that. If it's a game that I don't think will be worth keeping and it's much cheaper to buy online, I will get it online. Generally though, I am a supporter of you know, buying physical copies, so probably mostly eBay, I will say. You can usually find a good deal on eBay. Will you ever do a video with your PS2 games collection? Probably not, to be honest with you. Like, the juxtaposition of, like, really tacky movie games with really high-end, well-made, you know, classics like, I don't know, like Shadow of the Colossus, that kind of thing. It's really kind of jarring, you know. My shelf is a mess right now anyway. I usually like to organise things logically, like you got the Disney section, and then they're all like, they're not alphabetised, but they're in order of release. I usually like to have an order to it, but currently, because I'm recording a lot, I do like to try and tidy my room, but genuinely, it's an absolute mess. Like, games are everywhere. What's your favourite Disney franchise or movie? It depends, are we talking strictly Disney? Are we talking Pixar? I mean, Disney is like a massive conglomerate now. It owns everything. If we are including Pixar, and we're talking franchises as in movie franchises that have so many sequels, my absolute favourite would probably be the Toy Story franchise, up to and including Toy Story 3.
You are a toy!
We don't talk about Toy Story 4 anymore. I think the standard dropped massively. I thought the fourth one was a huge slap in the face to all the fans of the first three movies, and I think that was pretty clear from my initial response to Toy Story 4 when that came out.
Compared to the previous three films, this is a travesty.
In terms of other Disney franchises, I can point out like my favourite Disney movies, probably. Though they kind of vary a lot and they change from week to week. In terms of the older movies, I would say Fantasia is definitely in my top 10. 101 Dalmatians is probably up there as well. I love the Disney Renaissance. I fully understand why people love the likes of Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, you know, they're like the big ones, the early 90s. I actually tend to prefer a lot of the later 90s stuff. Hercules, The Hunchback of Notre Dame especially, I think that's a masterpiece of a movie.
I'll be content.
Mulan and Tarzan. And I also love the period afterwards that's often maligned, although I'm actually glad that in recent years some of these movies have developed a bit of a cult following, like Atlantis The Lost Empire. Lilo and Stitch has always been popular. Stitch is still everywhere. I've mentioned this in my my reviews of the games as well. The movie's actually really good until about like the last quarter of it, and then it just kind of peters out, like they didn't know how to end it. I don't know why they're doing a live action one. I fucking hate live action movies. Also, of course, it goes without saying, I love Treasure Planet. And I actually love Brother Bear. Brother Bear is probably in my top 10 Disney movies as well. I don't understand why the movie's not talked about more than it is. It's not got the best pacing. I understand some minor issues people have with the film. Like, there's some very modern phraseology in it.
Pinky swear.
But I don't actually think it's a bad film. I think it's got, for the most part, I think it's got very good music. There's only one song in it that I don't like. Generally speaking, I like Phil Collins though, so you know, most of it's a winner for me. I also like The Princess and the Frog. That was like their traditional animation swan song, if you like. I know they had Winnie the Pooh in 2011, but that was a very small movie, and I felt like it was, even at the time, it felt a bit dated. I didn't dislike it. I just kind of thought, what was the point? Well, it wasn't awful. I still enjoy it, but yeah, I think Princess and the Frog was like their grand bowing out, really. One other Disney movie I need to mention is, despite my dislike of the games, I love Dinosaur. I actually watched it again very recently, and I don't know why Dinosaur's not talked about more, because technically speaking, it's Disney's first CGI movie. It's blended with live action. I don't understand why it's not talked about. I think it's a brilliant film. I mean, there's some weird bits in it. I don't think Aladar needed to be raised by lemurs particularly. It's like the first part of the movie is a bit of a Tarzan story, and then it kind of turns into this story about like a migration through the desert, which is, I think, a lot more compelling. Either way though, I think the film is great. Do you own any collectible version of a game? Shadow of the Colossus. And the version I've got is the original PS2 version. It's got some art cards in it. I'll be honest with you, I don't actually much care for these. I mean, I've never properly had a good look at them, but it came with these, and I don't know if it was limited edition or what. In a similar sense, a very different game, we've got Monsters Inc. Scare Island on PS2. I have seen a normal like plastic case for this as well, but this has got like this insert that has, I think once again, art cards. Yeah, art cards. Again, I don't really much care for these. I don't know if it's actually, you know, overly sought after or anything. I'm unsure of the rarity of this, but I've got the version of Silent Hill 2 that I've got is the director's cut. The only other thing I could think of in terms of a collectible version of a game, and I actually feel bad that I've got this because, once again, I've actually barely touched this game. I've got Oddworld Soulstorm, and it's the Day 1 audition, and it comes in like it's like a steel book with Abe's like scarred hand, and chest. It looks lovely, actually. It's a really, really well made, well put together box, and I have to say, I am actually a big fan of the original Oddworld games. Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, and Abe's Exodus. I love them. But this game, I have to say, I've barely touched it. I did start it a while ago. When you make videos on games, it is actually very difficult to find the time to play games for enjoyment. It also really lowers your standards. Like, you grow to appreciate the most mediocre of games. Like, you know, when you're subjected to the likes of Eminem Shell Shocked.
Oops. Uh-oh.
And you suddenly play something that's actually half decent. You're like, oh my god, this is amazing. It's the best thing ever made.
Hey everyone, Michael from the future here, just to add a small part to this video. While we're on the subject of collectible video games, I also have these books that accompany some of my favourite games. First of all, there's a Ni no Kuni strategy guide. While I want to make it clear that I've never actually used it as a strategy guide, it is indeed useful for finding out what enemies drop what items. But I mostly just got it to go with the game really, being as it's one of my favourites. It's an extremely detailed book and contains some concept art at the very end, as well as some interviews with people who worked on the game. It's really cool. Then we've got the Kingdom Hearts book. This is comprised of bios on all the characters across the various video games. And finally we've got the Okami book, which is basically a complete book of artwork for the video game. Otherwise, I also have the Wizard's Companion. This is also a Ni no Kuni book, and it was originally sold as part of a pre-order box. I never actually got that pre-order box. I got into the game far too late for that, but I managed to get this Wizard's Companion for a surprisingly cheap price. I think somebody on eBay was selling it, not realizing it was sought after. Finally, we've also got a cuddly Mr. Drippy. Now, I don't actually know where this guy came from. I mean, I got him from eBay, and I'm aware that there was a small cuddly Mr. Drippy that was sold with a pre-order box, but this guy is far too big. I genuinely don't know where he came from, but in any case, he lives here now.
Tidy.
And finally, any anime you watch or game you play. I don't tend to watch anime. I don't watch anime series anyway. I have seen a couple. I think the last series I watched in full was something called The Promised Neverland. I say in full, I never watched season 2. I watched the first season. I've actually heard season 2 is terrible. If we're talking animated series though, while I have never played League of Legends, and I have no intention of ever playing League of Legends, I did love the first season of Arcane. I've not actually seen any of season 2 yet. My boyfriend has, and he's doing his best to keep the spoilers away from me. But I am intending to watch it myself. But yeah, no, Arcane was brilliant, and I highly recommend, even like, whether or not you're interested in games, I think it's a great series, artistically and in terms of the character development and everything. I thought it was a great series. I'm also I was a huge fan, and I still am a huge fan, actually, of Olin Rogers' Final Space.
Oh, get it!
It was like a sci-fi comedy drama. I think people wrongly mistook it for like a Rick and Morty ripoff, and it's nothing like Rick and Morty. It basically becomes this massive space opera. I think what happened to it was terrible. Warner Brothers basically removed it from existence. Fortunately though, Olin Rogers was able to continue the story and conclude it in the form of a graphic novel, which I have actually pre-ordered. I pre-ordered it over a year ago now, and I look forward to it. You know, it is a shame that the series couldn't be concluded in the way that we initially hoped, but hey, at least he's actually managing to conclude it. And yeah, I'd hope at some point that the series is released on home video, like on DVD or Blu-ray, because, you know, I'm all about physical copies of things. I don't like the fact that big corporations can just remove things from streaming, and it's weird to me because it just encourages piracy. I don't understand why they don't see it that way. They don't want people stealing things. Well, you know, you don't really give people a choice. Green Blur Omari says, what's your favorite Dreamworks Animation games and movies, including the ones associated with Aardman? This is actually a really big question, okay? In terms of Dreamworks Animation games, people will likely already know this, but my absolute favorite Aardman game, actually one of my favorite movie games of all time, is Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and I'm not joking here. I think it's a brilliant game. In terms of Dreamworks movies, I love a lot of the early ones. I loved when they went in a darker direction. They were kind of like the anti-Disney. I mean, I love Ants. The Prince of Egypt, I think, is their ultimate masterpiece, personally. Obviously, everyone loves Shrek, come on. I love The Road to El Dorado. I love Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas. I've not actually seen that in some time, but it's a damn good film, and I love the score to it as well. I think it's great. In terms of other Aardman movies, Chicken Run is probably the top one. I also like The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I also like The Pirates in An Adventure with Scientists, and the Shaun the Sheep movie, the first Shaun the Sheep movie. The second one, Farmageddon, wasn't bad. The first movie had a lot of details in the background that you could pick out. The sequel, if you can call it a sequel, Farmageddon, it was lacking that. It seemed very basic and very child-oriented. It wasn't bad. It was, you know, the animation was spectacular as always, but it was lacking that kind of smart, witty detail of the other movies, I thought. I do also like How to Train Your Dragon. I've seen all three movies, though I personally think the first one is by far the best one. I know a lot of people argue that the second one is superior, but I didn't think so. I appreciate the fact that they kind of age the characters and there is development between movies. I think that's admirable, but I don't think they reach the same heights as the first movie. I also didn't know why the Vikings were Scottish. I thought it was very strange. I mean, it suited the characters, I just don't know why they were Scottish. Do you plan on reviewing games that aren't on PlayStation consoles and are exclusive to other consoles? I would like to branch out, however, I will say I grew up with PlayStations, so it's, and there's, you know, there's still a good many games I want to cover. I have considered it though. On my last Looney Tunes video, I know a bunch of people mentioned the Nintendo 64 Duck Dodgers game.
Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century!
And I would be curious to, you know, to give it a go. But at this point in time, there are no plans to cover anything from other consoles. I'm not completely averse to it. I would like to at some point, but like I say, there's still a good many games I want to cover. It's just finding the time to do it. Jerry Orc, hello. What mechanics in the 3D platformers you've encountered so far would you like to see done again? Perhaps in a more refined way. If you're talking games generally, I'm assuming you are. Because with licensed games, I have to say, it's very rare that you come across any kind of innovation in a licensed game. You do occasionally, but obviously a lot of the time they are either basic platformers or derived from a pre-existing game. I do appreciate it, I have to say, just going off on a bit of a tangent here, I do appreciate it when they do something other than a platforming game. Like for example, Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge, yeah, okay, so it is clearly derived from Devil May Cry. But, I mean, how often do you see that in a, you know, run-of-the-mill licensed game, you know? Same for, as much as I don't really like the game itself, Golden Glory, The Road to El Dorado on PS1, I do appreciate the fact that it's clearly trying to be something other than your standard platformer. It's more like a puzzle game, in a similar vein as Monkey Island. It did kind of fall a bit flat, I felt. I thought it was a good attempt, but it didn't really work for me. I've said it before, but one of my favourite PS2 games ever is Okami, and I just love the fact that you can draw things, make them appear, and inflict damage. I think it's brilliant. I can't think of anything else like it. I think even now it's still a unique game. I can't think of anything else that uses that same kind of technique, you know? Which do I prefer, Gibbons or Kinkadoos? Kinkadoos. They are much cuter. What's my favourite animal? I like dogs. I don't have any dogs. I also think I might be allergic to some dogs. I like them from a distance. I've never been that big on animals because I was never brought up with animals. The only pets I ever had were 2 goldfish. And I swear they died within like a month. There are plenty of animals that I can admire from a distance though, like raccoons. I mean, a lot of them are diseased, but they look very cute. But they're diseased. Pascal, aka Suitman, asks, are you planning to do a review on either Wacky Races for PS1 or Wacky Races starring Dastardly and Muttley for PS2? That is an interesting question, actually. First of all, yeah, I do want to do a review of the PS1 game. I'll be honest, it's been one of those that I've been planning for some time because, spoiler alert, I think it's a pretty bad game.
Oh, what a wacky wipeout!
Which is why I'd love to cover it. The problem with covering it is, obviously, you know, I like to cover them in as much detail as possible. And I have, when I was much younger, somehow I completed the game in full, 100%, with every single character. And I don't know how I did it, I don't know how I had the patience to do it, but I did it. I should like to do it again, but my god, I need a hell of a lot of patience. It is a horrible game. As for the other Wacky Races game on PS2 that you've mentioned, I did actually try to get that at one point. I got it second-hand from a shop in town. And because I stumbled across it, I'd seen it before. I know one of my nephews used to have it. Unfortunately, when I got it back home, it was unplayable. The disc just didn't work. For one thing, it was one of those blue discs, which is like a CD-ROM, and my PS2 struggles to play those all the time. I have to tilt the machine upside down at an angle to get it to accept the disc in the first place. But it was so scratched up, this disc, that it just didn't play. At some point though, I should like to get my hands on it and try again. But the PS1 game, at some point in the future, I should like to cover it. But yeah, I'm gonna need a hell of a lot of patience and vodka. Sapphire asks, if a Simpsons Hit and Run remake were to ever come into fruition, what would you genuinely like to see implemented? I don't know about extra missions, or like extra, you know, additional things to do around Springfield. Thing is, when I grew up with that game though, I didn't really need any extra missions. I actually just made up my own missions in my head, as sad as that sounds. It would range from things like, you know, pretending I'm on the run from the law.
Get out of my way! Every minute might be my last!
To Home Run Marge going out as if it's parents' evening at the school.
If the kids get any dumber, I'm gonna have to release them into the forest.
Something so mundane like that, but I mean, I suppose you could have some extra missions. I think as well, obviously, I would want a big map that incorporates all of Springfield. That's already been made, like fan-made anyway. But if they were to do like an official release, I would like that. What I would say though about a Simpsons Hit and Run remake is, for one thing, I don't think it will happen. I think if nothing else, there would be some controversy around Apu.
Ha! Clean up in aisle 1!
There's a whole Apu level, which I have to say was always one of my favourites growing up. I don't think there's anything wrong with Apu, personally. We won't get into that now. I've had a rant about it before, but there's a lot of sensitivity about political correctness these days, and I know there's been a whole controversy about Apu in recent years, so I don't really see a remake happening. I'd say it's probably more likely they would do a follow-up or a sequel. I think sometimes I should just leave things alone. I mean, the original game, I don't think needs a remaster. I played it again very recently, as you know, for my videos this year, and it's still just as engaging. That said, I also think though that it's very much a PS2 game. In some ways, I do think we've kind of moved on from that era. I love it, and I'm not saying it wouldn't be enjoyable, but sometimes I do think nostalgia plays a big part of it. I, generally speaking, don't like remakes. David Dumb Down asks, how many Nintendo series have I played? Not very many at all, I'm afraid. Like I say, I grew up with PlayStations. The only Nintendo games I ever had were Game Boy games. I've still got my Game Boy Advance and my Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color games in the other room. I should like to review them at some point, to be honest with you. I've got a whole bunch of licensed games there as well. I don't know how I'd record them. I think I can record them on the GameCube, but I don't have one of those. I've played bits and pieces of Zelda. I played a chunk of Wind Waker, but I've never owned a Nintendo console, so I've never actually given it a try properly. David Terez, sorry if I got your name wrong, asks, can you do a room tour? I like the room where you film reviews. I mean, it might be a little boring, but maybe. Sure. Alright, so this is a very brief guided tour of my room. Here goes. I apologise if the quality of the footage isn't great. I'm having to do this on my really crappy phone. I really don't like this phone. But basically this is my Futurama and Simpsons shelf. I collect a lot of tins, actually, around like Christmas. I get a lot of like novelty tins. There's a jukebox there.
and there's a few more on top of the wardrobe. That's a picture of me after graduation back in 2015. Those are the hams. There's not actually much else interesting here. That's my bed. Those are some wires.
Let me show you some of the different lengths of wire I use.
I'll be honest, that was my GCSE art piece, and it is still on my wall. I've been meaning to take it down for probably about a decade now. Haven't got round to it just yet, but it's actually in this room where all the magic happens, shall we say. I present the stuff in my bedroom, but this is kind of like an upstairs lounge area, I guess. And I basically live in a massive home video, like a VHS cupboard, basically. I'll show you a look around. Do not judge the mess of wires on the floor. I'm constantly having to change them for my videos for recording purposes, so that's why they're in a mess.
Look wise, my master. I have been chosen.
Alright, there we go. I'm surprised he still works, to be fair. He's recently had new batteries in him. PS4, laptop, PS3, PS2, PS1 is in the cupboard with an old handycam video camera. That's the one I used to use when I was very small and recording myself.
Let's do the conga.
And a load of games and videos. This paper here is to stop sunlight stealing the colour from the VHS sleeves. Yes, I'm insane. The other side of the room, we've got a lot of Disney videos. Very old VHS tapes, Looney Tunes. And on the other side, we've got The Simpsons. I've got seasons 1 to 20 on DVD. Futurama as well. And a lot of other old stuff that I never watch.
And finally, French Fries asks, do you ever do achievement hunting or trophy hunting in games? Here's the thing, this is actually a very interesting question. Because I'm very much in two minds about trophies, and I always have been. They can work as an incentive. If you really like the game and you want to strive for 100% completion, then fair enough. However, I also think trophies can ruin your enjoyment of the game majorly. I've got a friend who's really into the Persona series. I don't know Persona. I've never really played Persona, but she loved Persona 5 when it came out. Around the same time, we had a mutual friend who also played Persona 5, and he went ahead and basically blitzed the whole game, got the platinum trophy and everything. And it's interesting because my friend, she was clearly the one who loved Persona 5. She knew everything about it. She loved it from like an artistic perspective. She appreciated it. Whereas my other friend, it was more so about what he could do to show off. It's all about appearances. You know, I'm not saying I don't like, this friend of mine, but I do sometimes think that the focus is on looking good and your skill rather than appreciating the game. I've also spoken to somebody else, someone who follows me. Again, no disrespect to them or anything. I was talking about a particular game on PS3, but it was like a pre-trophies game. And I was saying I really wanted to get into it. And he responded by saying, oh, I never play any games that are pre-trophies, because what's the point? And I just kind of thought, well, that's a sad way of thinking about things. I mean, most of the games I play, to be honest, don't have trophies, because, I'm playing really old PS1, PS2 games. If there is a game that I really thoroughly enjoy, like the likes of Ni no Kuni, I will go to the effort of attempting to get 100%. That's not to look good or anything, because, I got the platinum trophy for Ni no Kuni, and yet there's still so much more to do after that. I went to the effort of actually getting 100% for the entire game, and that's long after you've unlocked the platinum trophy. I don't really care for trophies. Like, there's stuff in Kingdom Hearts as well, in Final Mix, that I did in the original game that I haven't bothered doing yet in the remaster, because I've done it once. I just don't care to do it again. Trophy hunting, there are pros and cons. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Anyway, I know this has been a rather small video. I am working on a script for Christmas at this time. A massive thank you to my new members and my new patrons as well. I've got some new people supporting me, and I'm very grateful for all of your support. I'll put a list up after this because I can't remember all of your names. But yeah, no, I hope this has been very different. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the room tour as well. Hope you enjoyed, guys, and I will see you again really soon.
Just quickly before I go, a big thank you to my patrons, Anthony Gallagher, Eagle, 3Spooky5Me, Volico72, and Matthew Shaw. Thanks also to my free patrons, Callum Cairns, Hannah Kingdon, Michael Shields, Dennis, GamerKid96, and Mood Faik. And an extra special thanks to my new members, 3Spooky5Me, Leo Tucker, and Reunion. Hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. As I say, I'll be back very soon. Bye-bye for now.